Greetings, Crocodile Army. Well, within the next 6 weeks or so, we need to decide who to vote for in the election. We've heard a lot of noise about the election, of course, from all sides. The parties have had their conventions, and the pundits both on and off YouTube are having their say. I hear a lot of things about the election, though, from people who I normally agree with, but disagree with when it comes to their views on the election. These people are mostly not Romney supporters, mind you. In fact, for the purposes of this video, let's assume that the possible options for most of you at election time are Obama, a third-party candidate, or not voting at all. Yes, Ron Paul fans, he still has a chance to make those write-in votes count. I've heard a lot of talk about third parties whenever I bring up the election in a video, and I like the concept of finding someone who's closer to my views than the major party candidates, but many people don't seem to give me a viable option. In numerous comments where I've asked, people tell me not to feed the two-party monster and vote for a third party. I'm not opposed to that at all, and I've in fact voted independent for Congress before. There's nothing magic about a third-party candidate, though, and if I'm going to vote for one, you have to give me some reasons for who you like, aside from meaningless statements like, well, they aren't part of the machine. Vermin Supreme isn't part of the machine, but I'm not voting for him either. The third-party candidate I hear about the most is the Libertarian Gary Johnson, who's polling somewhere in the less than 1% range. He's a fan of the fair tax, which is a national sales tax to replace the income tax. This is a horrible idea on many levels. First, you instantly give an incentive for people to stop buying things in an economy that's 70% driven by consumer spending. More saving and less mindless spending is a good thing, sure, but a national sales tax would slam the brakes on the economy in a big hurry. This is, of course, a perfect scheme for the wealthy, too. If you think Mitt's effective 14% tax rate was small, just wait until there's a national sales tax. He'll buy some things locally, sure, but any big-ticket items will simply be purchased overseas, which will suck even more money out of the economy. That shortfall will have to be made up somewhere, right on the backs of everyone else. I've heard other parties mentioned too, like the Green Party. There are a couple things I like about them in terms of policy, but in the current system, the biggest impact they can have is to split the vote so Republicans can win every time. W was elected based on it. In our system, a third party needs to have a fair amount of appeal to people who tend to vote for either party, not just the edge of one party or another. The Reform Party fit that bill once, but since Ross Perot stopped running, that kind of ran out of steam. These third parties need to get on the map locally and in Congress to build up some credibility and a record to run on, otherwise it'll be the same old pattern. If they can't win a race for a much more minor position, why is anyone expecting them to have a realistic chance for president? I renominate Ron Paul for White House Garden Gnome. I've heard a lot of people talking about there being no differences between the parties. I hear this argument from lots of people who I normally agree with, but it doesn't make the argument any more compelling. Every time I point out the numerous policy differences between Romney and Obama, these people tell me, oh, well that doesn't matter because the president has no control over abortion rights, even after I point out that the president nominates Supreme Court justices. Then I'm told same-sex marriage doesn't matter because that's just window dressing to the real issues. In other words, we're straight, so why should we care about that? Then I'm told that tax policy doesn't matter, because the Republicans and Democrats are in league with each other anyway, even after I point out the differences in proposed tax plans, and that the Koch brothers aren't investing millions of dollars in elections so they can get no return on it. There's another lame excuse for every one of a dozen differences I can point out, just from the top of my head. I know I'll still get comments on this video with people telling me that somehow the differences are illusions and/or that both parties are plotting together. I'm not interested in joining that ever-so-fashionable conspiracy until you provide some evidence. Then there are the laziest political thinkers of all, the apathy advocates. These are the ones who tell me not to vote for the two major parties because they're both part of the dreaded system, which for the record I agree is not a good one. Then, when I ask which third party they're voting for and why I should consider them, they tell me they aren't voting at all, and that there's no point in me voting either because my vote doesn't really count. Now, while I'm sure that the establishment is absolutely quaking in their sensible shoes at the prospect of someone not voting, the thought of them being able to convince anyone else of this is disappointing. As far as I'm concerned, if you care, you vote. Republicans are trying some dirty tricks to reduce the turnout in some states, but those are laws we can fight out in the open. I'm far from satisfied with the current system, but to be that sure that our voting system is rigged wholesale is engaging in a conspiracy theory the scale of which makes birthers and chemtrail nuts look like they lack imagination. But it's far more socially acceptable around here for some reason. If elections were rigged, then polling would be worthless and a poor predictor of the final results. This is, of course, not the case, and being a giant stats nerd, I watch polling very closely. My favorite polling site, the 538 blog, predicted the winner correctly in every single state except Indiana in 2008, and you can make money from your Republican friends who think Mitt will take Pennsylvania or Michigan. Does your third-party candidate have enough support to make it interesting? Well, if they do, the polls will show it. If you're solidly behind a third-party candidate, then by all means vote for them, especially if you're in a state where it won't be close. If your state will be close, like mine, then you may want to at least consider what the impact of the worst possible outcome would be, and whether you want to risk that. But that's entirely up to you. So I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, and I'm certainly not going to tell you you have to like your choices or like how the system is set up. But you do have a choice to make. Ron Paul 2012! I can't even keep a straight face.